Okay guys, for this week's video, I want to take you behind the scenes on the coolest trip I've ever done with my career here at Adventure Kings. Last year, I was lucky enough to be part of the hands-on testing and development process of the prototype MT1 camper trailer. And in this video, I'm going to take you guys on the most epic research and development trip I have ever done, and I'll show you some behind the scenes action of how we put the legendary MT1 camper trailer through its paces to make sure the finished product was ready to tackle just about anything that our customers could put it through. Now on this trip, we also took a couple of the awesome Kings kayaks to what I reckon is one of the most beautiful spots to go for a paddle just about anywhere in Australia. Our head photographer Dean and myself headed from Sydney all the way up to Brisbane to meet up with our engineers who actually designed the MT1 camper trailer. From there, we hit the road on a trip that would total over 7,300 kilometres and 89 hours of drive time in just 10 days. This really was the mother of all shakedowns because we were testing every single aspect of this camper trailer, from on-road towing to off-road capability and overall practicality. Just wait till you see what we put it through. So the first stop on this trip of a lifetime was a town called Charleville, and the thing that stands out in my mind about this spot was just how absolutely freezing cold it was. So bright and early the very next morning we hit the road once again and headed even further out west. One thing I should mention is that before this trip I had never actually personally seen the MT1 camper trailer. So I came into this R&D trip with a very critical eye and a notepad and pen to make notes on anything that might need to be changed. As someone who's been towing trailers, camper trailers and caravans since the day I got my license, I knew exactly what separated an average camper trailer from an incredible one. And this trip certainly showed me exactly what type of camper trailer the MT1 is. And in just a few minutes, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. Straight off the bat, one of my favourite things about this camper trailer is just how easy it is to pull off to the side of the road for a spot of lunch. Within seconds, you have access to an incredible bench top, a fridge and a full-on pantry. And talk about a luxury. And with 4 full-sized hungry blokes in transit, the pantry and the fridge got the work out of their lives. Now this was an absolute whirlwind of a trip. Big kilometres with a very limited time frame. But we still couldn't help ourselves but to stretch our legs at some epic scenery along the way. Now the next camp on our trip was a place I'm sure heaps of you might have seen all over social media, but you might not have known it's an actual place. And that is of course a tiny little town called Batuda, with a population of 0. This was one of my favourite spots on this trip because no one else was there. It was super quiet, we got a gorgeous golden hour sunset and some of the best night skies I've ever seen. We camped right next to the river there and had an awesome night underneath the stars. From there, we hit the road and headed to my absolute favourite place on earth, and that is of course, Birdsville. Now on the way out to Birdsville, we really got to give the MT1 a workout on some super loose gravel roads filled with rocks the size of golf balls. I was simply blown away by how well balanced the thing was. Our engineers really hit the nail on the head with this thing and they thought of absolutely everything. From where the wheels are positioned on the chassis, the location of the water tank, and even the wheel track which matches most modern dual cabs out there. Now once we reached Birdsville, we of course stopped into my all-time favourite pub, the Birdsville Hotel. As you all know, there's nothing quite like an unreal pub lunch. And honestly, I could spend days inside of this pub. Then it was time to head out further into the desert to try and tackle the infamous Big Red. We then grabbed our quickie tire deflators and aired down to have a few practice cracks at Little Red. If you don't already have one of these, then you need to get one. They save you so much time when it comes time to air down and hit the soft sand, especially if you have a trailer in tow. So it's also worth mentioning that we all weren't crammed into the one car either. We actually have pretty much identical Ford Rangers that you've definitely seen in a bunch of our content. One lives down here in Sydney with my team and I, and the other one lives up in Brizzy with the product team. Dean and I were driving the one with the kayak strapped to the roof. Now I'm sure all of you can imagine the looks that we got having two kayaks strapped to our roof in the middle of a desert, but you'll see exactly why we had them shortly. With Little Red posing no challenge at all for the MT1, it was time for the main event, Big Red. So if you're not familiar with Big Red, the tracks out there range in difficulty, so we decided the sensible option was to take on the chicken track first. Once we had tackled the easier tracks on Big Red, we were so impressed with how well the camper trailer and the Ranger handled it that we decided to have a run at the harder track, straight up the middle on the western side. And there you have it, our main goal for the trip accomplished. Of course, I couldn't help myself and had to have a crack at the hardest side, with the kayaks on the roof and all. And I'm man enough to admit I didn't make it on the first go. After we got the MT1 up Big Red, we set up the awning, had some afternoon tea and waited for that incredible Big Red golden hour sunset. Since Dino was driving for the rest of the day, I ended up grabbing a camp chair and a cold one and headed up to the highest point to enjoy some of the best views in the entire Simpson Desert. Now if this doesn't make you want to head out to the Simpson Desert, then I don't know what will. The blokes in the other car had to flip a coin to see who got to have a beer and who got to drive. But I really don't think anyone cared because the sunset out here was absolutely insane. As you can see, we're all a bunch of clowns, so we had to have a crack at sandboarding, and yep, we all failed miserably. So once it got dark, we headed back to Birdsville, fueled back up and headed north to a place called the Karkuri Ruins. Now if you haven't heard of the Karkuri Ruins, recently I did a video on my top 5 favourite campsites, and towards the end the Karkuri Ruins gets a special mention. But for now, let's get back to this epic trip. Just look at how unreal this part of the world is. I keep on saying it, but we really are super lucky to call this place home. Now if you guys want to see more footage like this, make sure you subscribe to our channel because I'm super keen to show you more behind the scenes action. With a huge 800 plus kilometre day ahead of us, we started heading north to our camp at Gregory River. Now unfortunately we had to drive into the night to make it there, but the sunset on the way was one to remember. When we woke up, we were greeted to an awesome campsite with fresh flowing water and absolutely stunning scenery. Plus, on the way out of Gregory River, we also got to put the MT1 through a couple of low-range tracks. From there, we continued north on even more tough and corrugated roads on our way to what I reckon would have to be one of the most unreal spots that I've ever been to, Lawn Hill. The thing that makes Lawn Hill so incredibly special, you're driving on heavily washed out and tough dirt roads for hours and hours until you finally arrive at this absolute oasis. Now, oasis would have to be an understatement when I describe this place. I'm talking crystal clear water, so clear that you can see all the way down to the bottom, absolutely stunning red cliffs on either side, and the weather is so perfect that even in the middle of winter, we were out there swimming. Now, this is exactly why we went through all the effort of taking these kayaks through the desert and got strange looks from everyone pretty much everywhere. I barely even have to tell you how glad I was to bring them along. Just check out how incredible this spot is. Once again, we hit the road, reluctantly. This spot was like a mirage and none of us wanted to leave. Again, when I was asked to tag along on this trip, I went in with a fine-tooth comb to see if I could fault the MT1. Even after being thrashed up sand dunes and driving thousands and thousands of rough corrugated roads, this thing seemed absolutely bulletproof. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that even after climbing Big Red and almost becoming airborne over some of the bumps, everything in the pantry stayed put and not one thing was out of place when we opened it up. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but it's the honest truth, and it really is a testament to just how unreal the suspension setup is on this camper trailer. Now, funnily enough, on the way out of Lawn Hill, we came across an old bloke who had lost a wheel on his $80,000 plus caravan. Basically, the wheel studs had sheared off completely on one of his hubs, and just by dumb luck, I managed to spot his wheel off in the scrub about 100 metres off the side of the road about 5 minutes later. We gave the old fella a lift into town where the local mechanic was able to help him out, and he was so incredibly grateful. It's always important to help someone out when you can. You really never know when you're going to need someone to return the favour. With 2 more days of big kilometres and a night camp behind the Prairie Hotel under our belt, it was time for a sea change. So the next stop was a place called Cape Palmerston, and again, if you haven't heard of it, check out that video I talked about earlier, because I go through my top 5 favourite spots, and this is one spot that I simply cannot wait to get back to.
As you can see here, the sand is insanely soft and our engineers ended up getting bogged pretty bad.
It took a few goes, but I managed to pull him out with our Ranger using an 11-ton snatch strap. Now, it's super important, guys, that you do not attempt a recovery like this unless you have proper rated recovery points, like the ones on both of our Ford Rangers. Do not attempt a recovery like this off the factory tie-down points. Now, on this trip, we averaged at least 10 hours of driving on every single day. So by the time we got to Cape Palmerston, we were absolutely knackered and well deserving of a rest. So we set up camp here for 2 days of much needed R&R before we headed back to Brizzy. The morning we woke up to pack up and hit the road, we were greeted with easily one of the most unreal sunrises any of us had ever seen. Just check out that gorgeous red sky. Not to mention the drive out of Cape Palmerston. It was absolutely insane, and I've never seen anything like it.
Once we got back to Brisbane, we gave the thing a good wash and a proper front to back inspection. And you guessed it, not a single thing was out of place.
Aside from the relocation of a couple of reflectors and a quick mod on the awning brackets, absolutely nothing else had to be changed. This trip will go down in history as the most epic trip I've ever done here at Adventure Kings. Needless to say, I am a huge fan of the MT1 after that trip. Since then, I've done a heap more trips with it and racked up tens of thousands of Ks. And I've even put together some videos with the MT1 on towing techniques both on and off-road. Now, I might be biased, but I reckon they're definitely worth a watch. So here's the link here.